Hi, I'm Mark Sylvester. Chances are that if you're watching this video, you've got back pain. In general, in Western society, we just sit far too much. About 90% of people in Western society have at least one serious episode of low back pain, and around about 50% of us suffer from recurrent episodes. Most people sit poorly because they've never been taught how. So now I'm going to show you how to sit correctly with the help of Michelle, our model here. When I ask people to sit up straight, most people when they attempt to sit up straight will sit up with their ribs like this. Whereas correct sitting is done from the foundation, which is from the pelvis, which looks like this. When people sit up straight with their chest, they're attempting to control what's going on with their spine with their chest and upper back, rather than using the foundation of the spine, which is the pelvis. This is a model of your spine. This is the front, and here's the back. Can you see these discs in between each of the vertebrae? The disc is quite an important structure in the low back, and it's probably the thing that's most commonly damaged when we slouch, bend incorrectly and hurt our backs. This is what it looks like in terms of your disc when you slouch. Can you see when I roll back, all the pressure goes onto the front of the disc? Now, because the disc is actually a soft structure, it's got fibres around the outside and fluid in the middle, which is a bit like a soft dew, so it moulds with pressure. If we put pressure on the front like that, the disc starts to creep out the back, starts to squeeze out the back. And eventually, if we put enough pressure through the front of the disc, we can actually stretch the structures at the back and weaken them. If we weaken the back of the disc enough, then what can actually happen is the fluid on the inside can actually pop through the outside because the outside wall is so stretched and weakened. This is called a disc prolapse or herniation. So you see that discs don't slip, they actually prolapse or herniate. And one of the things they touch as soon as they herniate is the nerve here. And if this happens, you'll get pretty significant pain down your leg and possibly some pins and needles or numbness down in your foot. This is what it looks like when people slouch and they're putting pressure on the disc. If we can get the pelvis rolled forwards and put a curve into the low back, so you have a concave surface here, it takes a lot of pressure off the back of the disc. Sitting like this will feel strange for most people, and many of you will need to learn how to do this from a lying position initially. The first step in learning to sit correctly is lying down with your hands placed over your lower ribs. Okay, now just arch your back for me. Notice when Michelle arches her back that her lower ribs come up, and when you've got your hands on there you'll be able to feel that quite clearly. Just pop it down again, okay, and arch up again. See the lower ribs coming up? Good, now pop that down again. What we're going to try and do now is we're going to attempt to arch the back without the lower ribs lifting, and when you've got your fingers on that you can quite clearly feel what's happening and you can learn to control them. In order to help Michelle arch her back from a pelvis, I'm going to put my hand down here underneath her tailbone. If you've got someone at home who can assist you doing this, that works very well. If there's nobody at home, you can slide a magazine along the floor towards your tailbone or a book, just to give you some direction to move your tailbone towards, which will help you tilt your pelvis in an appropriate way. So this time, Michelle, what I want you to do is control your ribs, so have your fingers on them there, control your ribs, and try and take your tailbone down towards my hand. See the pelvis tilting forward, and you can see I can feel the tailbone coming down onto my hand. That's a much more correct way to arch your back. Just flatten down, and we'll just show it one more time. Okay, without lifting your ribs, Michelle, take your tailbone down towards my hand. That's the sort of movement we're looking for. Well done. So once you've learnt to arch your back from your pelvis without lifting your ribs lying down, it's time to try a similar thing sitting up. What we're going to do now is ask Michelle to sit up, so sit up now please, Michelle. That's it. You've probably noticed that the ribs have come up. Now, we've got the ribs coming up, which we don't want, but we've got the pelvis coming into the correct position. So we've got part of it working properly and part of it not working properly. What I'm going to ask Michelle to do now is to keep her pelvis still and in the correct position, but lower her ribs. I'm just going to help her to do that. So just bring your ribs down there, Michelle. That's it. Just relax that down. This allows you to take all the tension out. Just let it relax. That's it. Just put your hands down. That's good. Now that's a pretty good sitting position. We've got the right shape in the back here, and we've taken the tension out of the chest. The final step is to learn to move the pelvis without lifting the chest at all. So what I'd like you to do now is place one finger on the belly button. So if you could put one finger on the belly button, please, Michelle. With the other finger, you trace up the tummy until you come to a bone at the base of your chest, which is about there. That's it. Now, in order to take this final step, what we need to do is roll the pelvis forward and take the pelvis and back into a good position without the chest lifting up. When this is done correctly, the chest moves forward, but it doesn't lift up. so the gap between the fingers remains the same. So let's try that now, Michelle. Roll the pelvis forward. Notice that the chest is going forwards but not up. This is done incorrectly. As the pelvis goes forward, the fingers do separate. Now we're into this position that we had to correct earlier on. When we do this correctly, when the pelvis rolls forward, the fingers don't separate. The chest comes forwards without lifting up, and that's how we find the correct sitting position. Notice there's been no increase in gap between the fingers. So just to recap, we've been through 3 stages of learning how to sit. The first one was lying down, learning how to arch the pelvis without lifting the ribs. The second one was in sitting, learning to arch the pelvis and lower the ribs. And the final stage was learning how to arch with the pelvis without lifting the ribs at all. So once you've learned how to sit properly, ideally you should be able to hold yourself in this position for short periods. In fact, learning to hold yourself like this will make your back stronger. However, most of us need to sit for long periods, either at work or in the car, and in that situation we need appropriate lumbar support. And you can see an appropriate looking lumbar support here. You can probably see that Michelle's sitting in the correct position here. If she just shifts backwards, the lumbar support will support her in the right places. You can see that when she relaxes, she's just automatically sitting in the correct position, providing she sits with her bottom right back in the chair. It's very important to have appropriate lumbar support if we're sitting for long periods. It's also important to get up regularly if we can. Some people say you should get up every 20 minutes, probably every half hour is enough, but taking the opportunity to take breaks is very healthy for your spine as well as being very good for your concentration. We've started with sitting because this is a fundamental problem for many people. However, it's not the only thing that can go wrong with your spine. We're going to be bringing you some more tips later on to help you with some other things, but the most important thing to realise is that pain is a warning that something's wrong. If you have a problem, don't put up with it. Go and see someone and see if you can get it sorted out.